So, emotional emancipation, sourcing Black joy and resilience. I believe that emotional emancipation is imperative for us as people of color, that we must find ways to free ourselves from the incessant bullying that shows up in the microaggressions and systemic oppressions that we as people of color experience daily in one form or another. I call it bullying because most people can understand what that means. They've had, most of them, or some of them even, firsthand experiences of what bullying is. Bullying is an aggressive behavior that involves real or perceived, imagined power imbalances. And power is the unequal distribution, right? An unequal distribution of access to, and the ability of one group or another, thereby allowing them greater access and control over the resources. So we know we've experienced this. We have been bullied for more than 300 years. Running, trying to get away from this experience for some of us of being in a skin that we feel like we were born into. And just by the nature of being born into this skin, something is wrong. The Intergroup Resources and Online Resource Center for Social Justice says wealth, whiteness, citizenship, education are a few key mechanisms through which power operates. Power may also be understood as the ability to influence others and impose one's beliefs. They say that all power is relational and that the different relationships of power either reinforce or disrupt one another. We have the power to disrupt or reinforce one another. This concept of power to anti-racism and the advancement of sourcing Black joy and resiliency cannot be understood without also understanding that power is not only individual power, it's cultural as well. We have the benefit of a Black culture, Blackness, Black love, Black joy within us as a culture. And I say, yes, we have the power to source Black joy. And it is that power, that joy, that will emancipate us. But not first without dealing with some things. So remember I said bullying. Any involvement with bullying behavior is one where a stressor can create significant contributions to how one feels, the feeling of helplessness and hopelessness, and that raises the risk of suicide. Getting to that place of being willing to look at the discomfort of the emotions that we can constantly be bombarded with is a source of courage and real strength. It's a risk that we must be willing to take. We must come together to create a safe space to purge the systemic oppressions that have gotten us sick into our bones. The US National Library of Medicine reported that stress is an imminent risk factor with a documented negative impact on neuroendocrine and immune systems. So it's no wonder our people have suffered so much with different kinds of physical ailments, hypertension, diabetes. And am I saying it's just that? No, but it's multiple factors compressed and compounded together through daily interactions. The CDC reported as of 1995, the suicide was the third leading cause of death among Blacks aged 15 to 19. The risk factors associated with suicides among youth feeling helpless and hopeless. Some of them having depression or family suicides, impulsive aggressive behaviors, social isolation, easy access to alcohol, illicit drugs, and lethal weapons or lethal suicide methods. Other factors may be the growth of the Black middle class. And I thought when I read this, I was like, are you serious, right? that there's an additional stressor, not just by being born Black, not just by perhaps experiencing some economic stress. So think about this in the context of the 8 dimensions of wellness. They said other factors may be the growth of the Black middle class, that Black youths and upwardly mobile families may experience stresses associated with their new social environments. So let me interject that this is, at least in my opinion, it reinforces Black as a lesser class as well. It goes on to say that these youths may adopt coping behaviors of the larger society, in which suicide is more commonly used as a response to depression and hopelessness. I love what Bell Hooks says here, that true resistance begins with people confronting pain and wanting to do something about it. So I think that we come, as we continue to grow year after year after year, to a place where we're ready to source joy just from the nature of our being, where we're ready to really take a look at deeply and heal the divide of mental wellness in the Black community. It goes on to say that another factor may be that the recording of suicides as a cause of death on death certificates may be less likely entered for Black youth. This seems to mean that there is a high cost to being Black no matter what, no matter your economic status, no matter what, no matter how much education you have, no matter how much you learn or don't learn. In an article for Diversity and Inclusion, Understanding the Emotional Tax on Black Professionals in the Workplace, Black tax. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of that. It's a cost to be Black. And in that idea of having a cost to be Black, how can we find and source joy within this? How can we become not just resilient, because we've had to be resilient in many, 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 many years, but how can we find joy in that resiliency? Catalyst defines emotional tax as the combination of feeling different from the peers because of gender, race, and/or ethnicity, and the associated effects on health, well-being, and the ability to thrive. These experiences can be particularly acute for people of color who are fearing being stereotyped, receiving unfair treatment. And while most experiences of otherness are detrimental, a generational lifetime of being marginalized can have uniquely potent, and I say detrimental, effects, including on the health and the well-being. From a survey for Bloomberg, it states that while the majority of Black survey responders in this one, what's the word that I'm looking for? Test or I can't think of the right word. Somebody can put in the chat if they remember what I'm thinking. But there was a survey taken, and the majority of the Black respondents reported facing discrimination, while those with, whether they had college education or not, those with higher degrees of education experienced even more. And they said that they'd been more likely to be affected. As much as 62% of the Blacks in a particular stem cell field, as was compared to only 44% of Asians, 42% of Hispanics, and 13% of whites. They revealed that their experiences were forms of racial or ethnic discrimination at work, including earning less than a coworker with the same abilities, same education, with the same roles even, and sometimes even a lesser role, and receiving less support than their peers from managers. We must find a way, a healthy way, to face these emotional stresses. And I'll speak more about some of the ways that we can do this in just a moment. So I urge you, because this type of daily stress, regardless of socioeconomic placement that we still face, adds to the lack of opportunity, unfair hiring practices, low wages, and earnings. I think it influences risky behaviors like joining gangs to find meaning and belonging, the use of drugs and alcohol, and other risk-taking behaviors that can be classified as suicide attempts. Hear me out. A suicide attempt is a non-fatal, self-directed, potentially injurious behavior. Could we not say that joining a gang is potentially dangerous? Could we not say that over drinking doing drugs, illicit drugs, is potentially dangerous. My thought is that these types of behaviors in youth result from unresolved trauma, being born in a society where their very existence creates stress, where their life isn't a source of celebration, but a warning from birth. From the womb, they come out being warned that they must be careful, careful of the police, careful in the schools, the neighborhoods, the streets, careful at the job. And the list goes on and on. All of this because of the negative experience of being born Black in America. So this next quote, I really want you to really hear it and listen to what it has to say. And think about all that I have shared with you, all the stresses, all the ideas of being born Black, and just by that sheer nature, something is wrong, all of this. The things that people have said or done, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Rick Hansen says that the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. The brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. So I don't know about you. I know I sometimes have used Velcro. And when these two things stick together, as they're pulling apart, there seems to be these holes that are left. This Velcro tearing apart, you can hear it. It's so much more damaging on an emotional level. So think about what and how you can do to be the positive experience in someone's life. So it's no wonder that this can be seen as an unconscious death, or these kinds of behaviors. The drive for aggression is the external representation of the death drive, says Freud. I like that name. He believed that most people channel their death instincts outwards, and some people, however, direct it at themselves. And this usually comes up as depression and has often been described as anger turned inwards. When we give ourselves permission, and when we give ourselves an inlet for joy, we conversely give ourselves an outlet for the pain. Marcus Garvey says we must begin to amplify the positive experiences associated with being Black. We're going to emancipate ourselves from the mental slavery, because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. According to Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, positivity researcher at the University of North Carolina, it takes three positive experiences to offset just one negative experience. That you're more likely to store a threatening memory, a negative memory, than a positive one after just one episode, all in the name of survival. It's hardwired. So I don't know about any of you, but I remember all those many, probably I think 20, maybe a little bit more years ago with 9/11. I remember exactly where I was. I can close my eyes and I see it right now. I was in my bedroom in Irvington, New Jersey, sleeping. And my friend called me on the telephone. I know exactly who it was, and I know the time. I know what I did right after I heard the news. I went into the living room, turned on the television. But if you ask me what I did last week on Tuesday, I can't tell you that. I cannot remember that with that level of clarity. It's because it was a traumatic experience. It was a very negative experience, and those things have imprints. So how can we begin the emancipation of the joy, and how can those who wish to be an ally support us? And that's what I'm going to share with you. We must first remember our ancestors and ground ourselves in the truth. Every single one of us has a legacy of success running through our veins. Perhaps you come from people who ran towards freedom, Or were the white families who helped people run and get free? Ground yourselves in the truth. Even if your people never left the plantation, the cotton fields, or the railroads, know that you are powerful. Dr. David Hawkins, in his book, Power versus Force, which I absolutely love, by the way, says that power serves others, whereas force is self-serving. We've been serving in the field, serving in the kitchen, serving in the houses, and there is no shame in that because we carry power. If you know where you are from, it is harder for people to stop you from where you're going. So it doesn't mean that you have to know your family, not specifically, because there are plenty of people that may have been adopted and don't know their biological family, but you know the color that you come from. We all know that that treatment that we experienced, Black people experienced in slavery, and still is unfair, unjust, and cruel, and inhumane. What we must admit that it was damaging to everyone. To think that and do that to one group of people, one must come from a place of deep insecurity and fear. So as the successor of that legacy, it is your duty and birthright to create a new legacy. One that supports the upliftment and healing of the Black people, their spirit, through legislation, through policies, through laws that really create equality and justice for all. Power serves, whereas force is self-serving. We can see even now that there is no real power because any policy, law, or legislation that is self-serving is just another act of force from a group of people that would like it to maintain their own superiority. So here we have definitions of words. I have a friend who's on here who loves words. So why did I choose this? Why did I choose to include a definition of words as a part of this presentation? Because the old saying goes, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Do you remember that? I remember that. I'm old enough. A single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. Did you know that? Dr. Andrew Newberg, an MD, and Mark Walden wrote a book called Words Can Change Your Brain. Positive words such as peace and love can alter the expression of genes, strengthening areas in our frontal lobes and promoting the brain's cognitive functioning. They propel the motivational centers of the brain into action, according to these authors, and they also help build resiliency. It's my hope that as we define these words, that we bring them into a crystallized affirmation, that it propels us into action by experiencing moment by moment by moment by moment, resiliency and joy. So an emotion is arousing a conscious mental reaction characterized by intense feeling directed toward a specific object, and typically accompanied by physiological and behavioral changes in the body, which is openly displayed. What kind of emotions would we like to display? What kind of joy can we get to? Emancipation, the fact or process of being set free from legal, social, or political restrictions. Liberation, freeing of some form of slavery, freeing someone from slavery, from restraint, control, or the power of another, especially to be free from bondage. Sourcing, the process of selecting or the ability to be obtained. We have the emotional ability, we have the ability to source our own emotional joy and to be emancipated from the damaging effects of negativity, fear, doubt, slavery, anger, frustrations. Black plus joy, a member of dark-skinned people who, especially one of African or Australian Aboriginal ancestry, who possesses a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. This is all from the Webster's Dictionary. I didn't make any of that up. Resilience, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, spring back into shape. It is important for everyone to begin to experience a different narrative with the word Black, hence Black joy, and to begin associating it and themselves with joy. We often hear about Black plight, and it's usually associated with ghettos, a place or a section of a city in which members of a minority group live, especially because of social, legal, or economic pressure. That's the Black neighborhood. I hadn't thought of it before, but let me see what time it is. Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to share a story. I grew up in New Orleans, and we grew up in what was called the East. At the time that my family moved there, it was middle to lower middle class whites. And so we were one of the first families to move in this neighborhood. It was on the outskirts. It wasn't right in downtown, about 20 minutes from the main downtown area of New Orleans. And my mother was very proud to have moved in that neighborhood because, you know, the way the saying goes, you know, if you can move into a white neighborhood, you're doing pretty good. And I will never forget the day, I think I was about 5 years old, my neighbor, who they were an older couple, their daughter probably was my mother's age, and the granddaughter, who was my age, would come over and visit quite often. And they were so nice. They gave me Christmas presents every year, Easter baskets every year, birthday gifts. And then I remember one day when I was outside and I was wanting to play with the neighbors, their granddaughter, and she said, "Oh, we're moving." And I said, "You're moving? Where are you going? Why are you leaving?" She said, "Oh, my mother said there are too many," and that N word, in the neighborhood. And very shortly after that, she left. The whole family left, and never to see them again. I was 5 years old. I had zero concept of being born in the wrong skin at that age. I was just happy to be playing with another kid. So these things are taught. Newberg and Walden also state that a single negative word can increase the activity in our amygdala, the fear center of the brain. I have no idea what kind of fear that one interaction, but I am 52 years old. It happened when I was 5, and I can still see it. Am I in pain because of it? No, but it just goes to show us that these things have a lasting effect. So it is imperative that we continue to source Black joy. Negative words triggering activity in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, releases dozens of stress-producing hormones or neurotransmitters, which in turn interrupts our brain's functioning, especially as it relates to logic, reason, and language. Angry words, and this is for everybody, hear this. Angry words send alarming messages to the brain, and they partially shut down the logic and reasoning centers located in the frontal lobes. So how we speak to people is really important. Black joy is here as a reminder that we can and do have a spirit that is undeniable. And when we begin to see ourselves and our Blackness and having and experiencing joy because of our Blackness, we transform the forced and contrived legacy of pain and suffering into happiness and pleasure. This pleasure isn't pleasure for pleasure's sake only, but for the sheer emancipation from the emotional bondage and the baggage that the history of enslavement and systemic oppression tries to continue to restrain us and constrain us in. I believe that we can define Black joy as being a member of dark-skinned people, especially one of African or Aboriginal ancestry who possess the ability to feel great pleasure and happiness, who is either in fact or in the process of being set free from social restrictions from social restrictions or the power of another. He or she is conscious in how they think or react and aware of physiological and behavioral changes in the body with the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. It is time to start paying attention to our physical temple. Our body is the temple. And so we pay attention to the body when we pay attention to how you and I are interacting and how I feel when we interact, not just what I think, but how I feel. How does being in your presence make me feel? So I went ahead and I took this and I broke it into two compartments, this sourcing Black joy and resilience. And I made it an affirmation. And so if you were a member of this group of people that I'm speaking to that is ready to source Black joy, I invite you to say aloud if it is safe for you to do so, and if you're able to do so right where you are, to repeat with me that I am a member of a dark-skinned people. I possess the ability to feel great pleasure and happiness, and I am either in fact or in the process of being set free from social restrictions or the power of another. I am conscious in how I think and react, and I am aware of any physiological and behavioral changes in my body, which gives me the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. I want you to let that sink in. Sink into your skin, into the membranes and tissues of your being. I want you to feel it. I want you to own it. And I desire for you to be it every day. And if you are here as an ally and as a supporter for those of us sourcing Black joy and resilience, I didn't leave you out. So I offer that you read aloud if it is safe for you to do so. That I am a member of a support system. I possess the ability to celebrate the pleasure and happiness of Black joy and resilience. I am either in fact or in the process of supporting dark-skinned people of African or Australian Aboriginal ancestry to live free from social restrictions or the power of another. I am conscious in how I think and react, and I am aware of any physiological and behavioral changes in my body, which gives me the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties of creating an unjust and creating an just and equitable society. That's for you. I think that the healing happens on both ends and that we are all responsible to source Black joy. So there are many, many ways to do this. Show yourself radical self-compassion. Self-compassion is the conscious choice to treat yourself with warmth and empathy, with a genuine desire to show our self-care and love during difficult times. To do so without exception. It is the ability to be self-full, and the refusal to believe that caring for yourself is selfish. It is important not just to rest, but to give ourselves permission to rest. To not rest is really being violent towards your body, to align yourself with a system that says your body doesn't belong to you. To keep working, you are simply a tool for the production. That's Tricia Hersey, a founder from the NAP Ministry. The NAP Ministry is a community installation that examines the liberation and power of NAPs. She says that we believe rest is a form of resistance and can install collective napping experiences for the community to rest together in safe places. Protect your peace of mind. Protect your peace of mind by evaluating your values and your priorities, to spend time in meditation, nature, focus on your breathing. Use journaling not only just to dump some of the stuff that you've been through throughout the day, throughout the week, but use it to write about what things need to change in your life and what you need to do. Who do you need to become to experience what you want? Who do you need to become in order to protect your peace? Music, song, and dance. These are all very important because we are vibrational beings. Tam Hunt wrote in an article in the Scientific American that he and his colleague Jonathan Schuller have developed a resonance theory of consciousness. And that suggests that resonance, or another word for synchronized vibration, is at the heart of every human consciousness. And also of the physicality and the reality of the physical universe. So we can look at Dr. David Hawkins' work in his book, Truth versus Falsehood, where he used applied kinesiology to test the calibrations of music. And we can utilize a list of calibrations to find music that help us feel better and that uplift us, and we could sing and dance with this music. All of these things are important. This heart, in the month of Valentine's, in the month of Black History, which we know is celebrated all year long, just like we know love is celebrated all year long. But sometimes you got to give people a little bit of focus because you may not focus on your own. Show yourself some grace. Ask yourself, what do you need? And then listen for the answer. What does your body need? What does your mind need? What does your spirit need? And give yourself the gift of radical forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for everything that you did or didn't do. I have a quote from Colin Tipping, the author of Radical Forgiveness, which I love his website. It says, real true forgiveness is the cornerstone for a loving heart and a peaceful life. As long as you hold resentment and anger about things that happened in the past or that continue to upset you now, you won't find peace. Radical forgiveness has almost nothing to do with the common traditional forgiveness. It doesn't require you to pretend that you're not hurt or angry. In fact, you'll honor your feelings more than ever. And then you will experience a conscious, authentic shift in your consciousness to help you release the pain and the suffering. I've done this work. I've done the worksheets over difficult experiences, and they work. Just a few quotes before closing. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others by bell hooks. Choosing love, loving the skin we're in, sourcing the joy from just being born. Finding ways to become resilient and to celebrate our Blackness. And for our allies, finding ways to celebrate us as we celebrate our Blackness. Finding ways to do what you can when you can about standing in the gap between the disparities that show up. Loving everyone. And I love Nikki Giovanni's quote, I love you because no two snowflakes are alike. And it is possible if you stand tippy-toe to walk between the raindrops. To me, that speaks to the belief that it is possible. We must first believe that there is Black joy and that it is possible to experience joy and being in this Black skin. And so Journal of Truth closes this slide out. It is the mind that makes the body. So when we begin to have a different thought pattern about who we are, about what we are, about how we are, we begin to take on a different form. Nothing can tear us down. Our minds are stronger than we think. And in honor of the late Nelson Mandela, who refused to give up the struggle or give in to hate, he says the truth is that we are not yet free. We have merely achieved the freedom to be free, the right not to be oppressed. We have not taken the final step of a journey, our journey, but the first step on a longer and even more difficult road. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. The true test of our devotion to freedom is just beginning. So doing this, this came up as a conversation with a friend of mine, Evelyn, and she just mentioned about emotional emancipation and sourcing Black joy. And I thought, that sounds great. Let's do that. I had no clue that emotional emancipation circles existed at all. So there's a place called communityhealingnet.org, and they have emotional emancipation circles. And I want to read to you what their definition of emotional emancipation is. They said that emotional emancipation is about freedom from the centuries-old lie of white superiority and Black inferiority. It means complete freedom from all toxic ideas about the inferiority of Black lives, Black intellect, Black culture, Black values, Black hair, Black skin, and other Black physical features. It is the freedom to see ourselves as beautiful, lovable, intelligent, capable, and worthy human beings that we are. Freedom to see ourselves beyond the negative stereotypes that have burdened and limited us for centuries. Emotional emancipation is complete freedom from the emotional legacies of 600 years of dehumanization.